Hi there everyone, and this is Star, and welcome to the very last time that I'm going to be going through the 3-day cycle for this game. And I know that there's a lot of questions going into your mind, like why am I not going for the heart pieces, why am I not going into the Anju and Cafe quest or something, but just kind of bear with me a little bit, and I'll explain why I'm not really getting into that. Is that what I want to do for these very last two parts for this game is that I want to go over two things. I want to go over my final critique of for Majora's Mask. Is that the first half, while I'm approaching the final boss, is that the first thing I want to do is that I want to talk about why Majora's Mask isn't for me. I'm not criticizing the game in any way. I'm not trying to get after any Majora's Mask fans that are into the game or anything. I just simply want to explain why the game isn't for me. And for the second half of this critique, I want to go over what Majora's Mask could have done to bring the game into more what I would like from my Zelda game. Just for me personally. I'm not saying that I'm getting after it or anything. So, alright, so I guess we got to start with the first thing. Is that, well, what I'm going to be doing here really quick is that I'm going to be getting the 200 rupees so I could get the Chateau Romani milk so I could start heading into the boss. But okay, so let's get started here really quick, because I need all the time I need in order to process everything that's going on. Okay, so the first reason I want to bring up why Majora's Mask isn't really for me, and again, I know a lot of Zelda players are into this, I just happen to not be one of those, is the lore of the game. Is that a lot of things that goes around with the internet with Majora's Mask, a big a pushing point or a selling point, you could say, that that people like from it is its lore, and that's fine. You know, lore is great and everything, you know. I'd probably say out of all of the Zelda games, Majora's Mask probably encourages more lore than anything else. For example, you got the aliens, you got the, let's see, you got the teleportation thing into Termina or something, you got been drowned, you got plenty of things to work with, and that's just kind of not my type of thing or something. Like, I'm not really the type of person to really speculate or to really just make assumptions about things that happened. You could just kind of say I'm not into lore, I'm not into creepypasta. I'm more into, I want to get the facts rather than just kind of speculator. Rather than just kind of get into those kind of things. So that's the first thing, is that a lot of people talk about the lore in this game, and that's kind of the thing that involves them into this game. But that's just something that's really not for me. Alright, so that's the first thing I wanted to bring up with Majora's Mask, is that in other Zelda games, it doesn't really speculate on the lore as much as it does with this game, and that's kind of why I like the other Zelda games, like Ocarina of Time or something. It gives you the story straight. With Twilight Princess, it's a little bit more obscure, but it kind of knows its facts and what it's trying to do. And the same thing with Wind Waker, is that it doesn't really go into too much speculation on what's going on in the environment. Same thing with Skyward Sword. And with Majora's Mask, like for example with game theory, and there's a lot of theories and a lot of assumptions and things that just kind of gets thrown around with Majora's Mask, and I'm just really not a fan of that. That's not really a selling point to me. Okay, the second thing I wanted to talk about why Majora's Mask isn't really for me is the storyline. I want to explain about this quite a bit, is that I've talked about before that Ocarina of Time is the simplest story. In the, I don't know if you were around for that part or something while I was talking about it in Snowhead Temple. The reason that Majora's Mask isn't really a plot that I can really get into is that it tells you what the complete story is early on. With Ocarina of Time, for example, when you get the 3 spiritual stones or something, that's a goal at one point for the first half of the game. And then the plot gets twisted around for the second half of the game for you to start going after the medallions. That's fine. That means there's actually more complex stuff to the story. Like Ganondorf actually gets the Triforce, he actually takes over the world, things like that. I could go into the other plots of Zelda games, but they seem complicated enough to not really settle on one plot. The problem I have with Majora's Mask with this plot is that it kind of keeps to one plot throughout the entire game. Is that as soon as you meet the Skull Kid, and you know what your objective is early, but there's really no twists or anything to the story. Like, I know some people could kind of argue with me about the side quests or something, but the side quests don't really affect any of the outcome or contribute anything to the plot when it comes to the Skull Kid. It's no matter which side quest you do, the Skull Kid is going to be sitting there at the top of the tower or until you come to him with the 4 masks. But it doesn't really matter which side quest you do in that time. It doesn't affect the story in any way, because they're side quests. So because Majora's Mask focuses a lot more on side quests, it's not interwoven to the plot compared to the other Zelda games. And frankly, I don't really like that. I like my stories to be complex. I want them to have twists. I want them to be required on twists, rather than them just being optional things that you can just kind of mark down into a book or something. And that's really what it comes down to, is that's kind of the reason that the story and the death theme and the moon just like coming down or something, it's really unimpressive to me, is that there's really no twist or anything to the moon just coming down. It's just a straightforward manner. It doesn't really change anything about it. And I think part of that is just because it has the 4 dungeons and the 1 year development time. So that's what my guess is that the Majora's Mask story, maybe a lot more people could be into it because of the side quests and how it involves it into the experience or something, but I'm not really buying that. Is that, to me, simplified, is that the story is just simply the Skull Kid is sitting there at the top of the tower, and there's no twist to the plot. And I know some could give the argument, though, too, is that the Woodfall Temple or the Snowhead Temple or something, like a Goron dies or a Zora dies or something, and those could be classified as story, but remember that Ocarina of Time did that, too. Every time you entered an area, for example with the Dodonga's Cavern, there were Gorons starving, and then you go out and help them. So I wouldn't consider that too much of an upgrade from Majora's Mask's part. I think that's the baseline you should probably touch on a Zelda game, is that every time you enter into an area, that goes for every Zelda game, but it doesn't go too much beyond that. But other Zelda games kind of add a little bit more of a complication to the whole experience. But alright, I think we covered that point. And again, these are all preferences. People can argue with me all they want. I'm just giving you my final results when I'm going through Majora's Mask. So I'm just simply saying why the game isn't for me. Okay, I want to talk about the 3-day time limit next. There's going to be 2 sides to this argument I'm going to be having with a 3-day timer or something. I played this game for a very long time. I'm talking 15 years or so, and I've talked about how the timer is kind of intimidating or something. And the only time that the timer really gets intimidating in this game is if you don't know what you're doing. Like, for example, you can go into the Great Bay Temple and the Stone Tower Temple and whatnot, and go into all of these different scenarios and everything, you know, and it kind of creeps up on you, and it kind of creates a seriousness to the atmosphere or something. And Majora's Mask players are going to praise it for this. They're going to say that the urgency of the time or something like encourages the atmosphere or something. That's fine. That's a fine point to make. But there's also the other side, though, too, with the 3-day timer, is that it's a little intimidating for some Zelda players to get behind. And that's a fact. Like, some Zelda players are going to get into that, some aren't. I happen to be one of those that's really struggled with the game all of my life just because of that. It's a really intimidating thing for me to go through. I hate pressure. I really do hate pressure in a Zelda game. I want to take my time with it, and the whole sorts. So I want to bring up the second half of the problem with the 3-day time limit is, after I've gotten accustomed to everything, like the Great Bay Temple and the Stone Tower Temple and whatnot, there's now another problem I'm starting to see with the 3-day time limit, just for me personally, is that, for me personally, I don't think there's really too much of a point in having the 3-day time limit around. Because after you get used to everything, like the masks and with the temples and everything, and they don't become a threat anymore when it comes to time if you know what you're doing. So the question I have to ask myself is, well, what's the point in having a 3-day time limit? Is that you have plenty of time to do everything. So like when you're trying to go after side quests or something, there's really no reason to really wait around and wait for those things to come around, or like that point or something is saying that the atmosphere, it pretty much died down or something. There's really no reason to really get scared of anything anymore and get into the atmosphere anymore because you know how to do everything. I hope that makes sense, because a big thing I've heard about the Majora's Mask players is saying that, oh, because of the urgency of time or something, it makes the game atmospheric. And I'd probably say that that point is valid on the first couple of times when you play Majora's Mask. But I'd probably say after that point is that it's kind of a little bit redundant to keep the 3-day time limit around for that reason, because the Zelda player is so skilled that there's really no point in having it be in the way or something anymore. So it just becomes a minor inconvenience now. You just have to reset everything and to start going after your quests and everything. I hope that makes sense. Oh yeah, I can just like climb right up, right? So I can. Whoops. Okay. So alright, so I'm waiting for the thing to come. Okay, so the next thing I'll talk more about that with the 3-day time limit when I talk about the improvements with Majora's Mask that I look forward to see. All right, the fourth thing that I've come across or something is the 4 dungeons. I think the 4 dungeons are fine. Like, just as they stand right now, Woodfall Temple, Snowhead Temple, Great Bay Temple, the Stone Tower Temple, I think they're fine dungeons. They do what they're supposed to do. They do great in what they're supposed to do in bringing the Zelda experience. That's fine, because in Zelda, great thing about the dungeons is that you want good dungeons. There's nothing wrong with that part. And of course, you know I'm going to be talking about the 8 dungeons thing next. And that's kind of something I'm going to talk about in the improved Majora's Mask section I'll be doing here in a second. But for now, we'll just let that one slip for a second. Okay, so the 5th part with the side quest. So this is the main one I want to talk about, and this is the biggest thing with Majora's Mask that kind of takes away from the experience for me. Because of the 3-day time limit with Majora's Mask, that is its biggest problem for me with it personally, is that when you do these side quests or something, is that a lot of Majora's Mask players, time and time again, they tell me, and this is just something I can't take them seriously on, is that they say, oh, it feels like Link, and it feels like you're doing something like for the world or something, but this is the big issue I have with it, is that it doesn't matter if you do anything good for the people, or if you do nothing for them, or if you do anything bad for them. And this is the big thing that keeps on coming back, is that it doesn't matter if you really do anything for the side quests, because as soon as the 3-day timer starts back over, then you haven't helped them anymore. And I know there's that argument that, oh, you feel accomplished or something, but there's nothing really accomplished for them. It feels like a selfish notion for me, just personally or something, to say, oh, I got a kick or something out of this and saying, oh, I did the right thing or something, you know, but it's kind of like, for example, if you were fixing a pipe for somebody, like in real life or something, and then you say something like, oh, I feel good because I helped out this person or something, and then you just become like this Man in Black person, and that you had that little memory stick or something, and just make them forget everything. And that's what it is that it's just a temporary fix. They forget you. They forget that you ever helped them. And for me, that satisfaction isn't really there for me when it comes to Majora's Mask. So that's kind of an argument that I can't ever really take seriously when somebody pipes up and says, oh, Link is like doing all these great things, but who cares? The 3-day time limit starts back over. Which means I got this trophy and I feel good about myself, but that's the entire point behind it, is because I was selfish. I felt like I was only helping myself. There's no permanent fix for anybody that I was helping it. And for me, that just makes me feel unaccomplished as a Zelda player. Like compared to the other Zelda games, is that you help them once, and then everything's all over. And of course, you get a trophy and an accomplishment or something, but every time that you start back the 3-day time limit, every time that you go out to help out somebody else, in the 3-day time limit, those guys are going to end up being miserable. For example, since I didn't help out Romani this time, since the 3 days have passed, like right now, the aliens have already gotten to her, and now she's feeling pretty darn miserable. But I did it before. I helped her out before, in a previous timeline, when it came to a 3-day cycle or something, but now every time that I'm done with that quest, and I move on to every cycle of the 3-day time limit, she's feeling miserable every single time after that. So I helped her 1 out of, 20 times now? So to me, I'm more of a person that wants a permanent fix to helping those kind of people. I don't like temporary fixes because there's no consequences in the end. It's like playing Mass Effect, and you have 3 choices to pick. You could choose to take the good ending, you could take the neutral ending, or you can take the bad ending. But the end consequence becomes the same, and I don't like that. I like to feel responsible for my consequences when it comes to Zelda games. And it feels like the only reason with the side quest for me is that it's just doing it for the lore, or like a museum exhibit to say, oh, I wonder what would happen if you do it this way. But in the end, for me, it's not a permanent fix, and to me, that's a problem. That's my biggest gripe with this game, is that the side quests and the content and everything, I'll give Majora's Mask this, is that it has a lot of content behind it, but the biggest issue with it is that there's really no attachment to anything, to any of the content inside of the game. There's so much of it, but because they come in such small space in between each part of the content, you don't really get any character development or any attachment to any of them. Just for me personally, from it, is that you only spend just a little bit doing this, a little bit doing this, a little bit doing this, but you never check up on them or follow up through with that. It's just, you just did this thing this one time. And to me, that's just kind of like the World of Warcraft thing that I've kind of been talking about. Anyways, as we go up to the moon, I'm going to talk about the second half. So we're going to let this go by for now. But yeah, this is going back to the second thing right here, is that I was talking about that the plot isn't very complex or very required or something, is that this isn't a very complex thought to me. Or plot to me, anyways. Let's see, I think I need to see the Sonata Awakening, Oath to Order. Okay, I know how to do that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I want to start going into the ideal world that I expected from Majora's Mask. And I've never really talked about this before, so you can kind of call this fan fiction. Anyways, we're going to let this cutscene go right here. So this is what I expected from Majora's Mask and what it could have done to really be that big experience for me. And I really do mean this, is that I'm going to tell you a little bit about the 3-day time limit. I think a lot of things in Majora's Mask it did just fine. So the big thing I want to talk about is the 3-day time limit, the side quests, and the dungeons really quick. Those are really the big things that I wanted to change about Majora's Mask. So let me explain quite a bit. Is that instead of doing the 3-day time, just kind of like counting down or something, like the 3 days or something, is that I think it could have executed it differently, like cycle through it differently. You know how you do the first day, you do the second day, and then you do the third day, and then you come back to the start or something and just kind of do the entire thing back over. I would have actually preferred it an entirely different way in how they could have done Majora's Mask. And let me explain here really quick, is that how they should have cycled through the days should have been completely different. I wonder if I should let this cutscene just kind of like go through here really quick so I can actually talk a little bit while I'm on the moon. But the big thing about Majora's Mask, I guess I can kind of talk since I don't have the controller, is that one of the big things that it should have done is that every time that you get a dungeon done, like for example with the Woodfall Temple, is when you would go through another day. So like when you're moving up to the Woodfall Temple, it's the first day. After you get the Woodfall Temple done, then it becomes the second day. And then when you get the Snow Peak Temple done, then it becomes the third day. Or, yeah, something like that, and then something along those lines or something. So that by the time that you get the Stone Tower done, the moon is really close and it's close to the apocalypse. And let me tell you why this would have worked out better compared to the current time that we have right now. In this time cycle right here, it kind of creates pressure. It kind of creates pressure on the player, which I don't really like or something in its current form. So I think it would have done it more justice if it made each day go by every time that you get a dungeon done. I hope that makes sense. So what I'm trying to say with this is that, and let me tell you, this is going to tie into the side quests next, is that one of the biggest things I was disappointed with Majora's Mask is that there's no really character development, because when you go back to day 1, then the character development just resets itself, and there's really no reason to really follow up with anybody in Majora's Mask. So the way that I was doing it, like what I was talking about with doing it by the dungeon or something, traversing it by the day, is that what they should have done is they required you to go and check up on a number of people or something before you go over to the dungeon. And it's been done in Zelda before. Is that you have to get certain objects from people in order to get to the next dungeon. So what they should have done is that before you can go into each dungeon in Majora's Mask, is that you have to help out a certain number of people. Then after the dungeon is done, then it goes over to the second day. And then this is what they should have done in Majora's Mask, is that you follow up with some of those people that you talked to during the first day. You see what I'm saying? Is that, so the first day you help out some people and then you get a dungeon done, and then you are required to help out more people in the second day before you can go up to the Snowhead Temple. That can give you some character development right there. And then another dungeon done, then it goes up to the third day. And there's no time limit or anything in real time, it's just that you can take as much time as you need to help out every single person. I hope that makes sense. And then when the third day rolls around, then by then you can go out and help more people. And then by the Stone Tower Temple, it's the last few hours, and then we'll be at this scene right here. I think, in my opinion, I think Majora's Mask would have worked out a lot better for me in this case or something, because every time that you're helping somebody out with the character development in between each dungeon, is that it keeps on progressively getting more and more better. So that way I have more of an attachment to each of these characters that I've been talking about. So instead of this system right here where after the 3 days are done, then we'll just erase the save file pretty much. On just everybody we just helped. I hope that makes sense. That's kind of the Majora's Mask reality that kind of worked out, that could have worked out better for me. So I hope that makes sense. And this is the last part I want to talk about and what Majora's Mask could have done better for me. Is that, you know how I talked about with the 4 dungeons? This is honestly how I think that Majora's Mask could have pulled it off. Like, you know, the 4 dungeons that we have right now and kind of up to this point right here with the moonlight crashing? This is what they should have done in order to get that big attachment to everybody that you have helped with Majora's Mask. You know, you've gone through these 3 days or something, and yeah, one of the big things with Majora's Mask is that one of the things I think they could have done is that after the 3 days are done, and just like with this happening right here, like with the after the Stone Tower Temple is done, is that since you've developed all of these attachment to all of this development to all of these characters in Majora's Mask, they should have let the moon crash. I know that sounds kind of weird, let me explain. Is that what should have happened is that Link somehow survives the explosions. Like somehow, I don't know how, I wouldn't be able to figure something like that out. But now because you have all of the character development to all of these characters, what should have happened is that the moon should have created an apocalyptic world. To the point where, an apocalyptic world to the point where everybody just dies. And so Link is just stranded in Termina all by himself, just surrounded by all these enemies and all of these dark creatures or something. And then this is where the 4 dungeons comes in or something, is that what they should have done is that what the Skull Kid should have done is taken away Link's Song of Time, so he's not able to go back into the past to fix anything. So now he's stranded into this apocalyptic world. He's helped out all of these people who have died, and he has a chance to go through 4 more dungeons. So that way he has the chance to get the Song of Time back and to reverse everything that the Skull Kid has done. And that to me would have been a brilliant... I know with the 1 year development time they couldn't create something really that complex or something, but to me that would have been the perfect Majora's Mask game. Is that each cycle of time just goes through 1 day at a time. You know, the first day, the second day, third day, it should have done it by temples instead of just doing it in real time. Then what should have happened is that the apocalypse should have come, and you've already gotten the development, you've helped out these characters every single day. It falls onto the world, Link is stranded, he's surrounded by enemies, and he has the chance to get the Song of Time back by going through 4 more dungeons. And there's that incentive there, in order to keep Link going. You see what I'm saying? Alright, so we're gonna be... Oh shoot, I forgot the Chateau Milk, I guess. But yeah, I'm done with that for now. But I just, those are my thoughts in what Majora's could have done in order to pull out its full potential. And I've already explained everything to you. So that's really what it is. And I think I should have gotten some fairies before I came into this fight. I'm just starting to realize that, but we'll see what we can do.